Hi dear ones, I hope you're having a beautiful night tonight. My name is Sarah Lustig and I am a spiritual activator and a soul harmony coach. And what that means is I help women access their full innate power. I help them access their inner medicine and magic and bring their soul purpose into life with ease so that they can be in alignment for the life of their dreams and not have to go chasing it, not have to make it hard, but making it a lot more fun and enjoyable and effortless in the process. So tonight I'm going to be talking about honoring the darkness around us and honoring the darkness within us. I'm going to be looking down at some notes that I've taken. I like to keep notes or take notes before to kind of prepare myself because I tend to get a little off track and go off on tangents sometimes. So having my notes just allows me to stay on track and stay present with you here and make sure that I am talking about the things I want to be talking about. So welcome to everyone who is joining me. It's so good to have you here tonight. We are here on the eve of the winter solstice. And honestly, winter solstice is one of my favorite days of the winter because it marks the first day of winter. It represents the day that has the shortest amount of sunlight and it is the longest night. So it's when we have the most amount of darkness. And I love this day personally because I love the sunlight. I love the daylight. And so for me, this marks that kind of rebirth period of when we're moving again more towards sunlight and longer days, when we're moving more towards warmer days again, and having more sunny days and not as much winter. So just knowing that we are in this time that is, a really potent time of year for us to also go inward and connect with our own cycles and our own seasons. The winter solstice is such a great day because it allows us to really reflect on what within us has shifted and changed in the last year, what within us is no longer working in our life or no longer applies, and being able to, kind of let those things go. The beauty of kind of fall and winter is really it's about letting go and it's about slowing down. It's about releasing our control on the lives and in our lives and the things around us. And so connecting with this time of the winter solstice, connecting with this darkness and this time of darkness and what that might mean for you. One of my favorite kind of quotes is a German proverb, and it goes that it's always darkest before the dawn. And that's very true on this day, that we are in this time of darkness, but it is before the light really starts returning and rebuilding to be here in its more full expression. And so we come together to honor that darkness and honor that, a new year is on its way, brand new beginnings, while this year falls and fades away. And so being able to just reflect on and honor those endings before we begin our new beginnings. And to recognize that it's so important to honor our darkness because it is just as much a part of us as our light is a part of us. That we are always working with both of these energies in our life, and we have the ability to really be in balance with them and to be in harmony with them. And what that looks like for each individual person is going to be a little bit different based on their experiences and based on their wounds and their patterns and their purpose. But recognizing that we all have both light and darkness within us, we all carry both of these energies and both of these sides of the spectrum, and not to make our darkness bad, but to be willing to step towards our darkness with an open heart and a curious mind, and being willing to explore this darkness, and doing so not from a place of trying to fix it or change it or correct it, but doing so from a place of wanting to understand it, wanting to embrace and accept these parts of you, wanting to appreciate and value the role that they can play in your life, in your healing, in your spiritual awakening, in your journey to becoming your most empowered self. We cannot be a fully integrated person without being connected to and aware of our darkness and how that darkness plays out and shows up in our lives, in our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others as well. And so I want to talk a little bit about what this darkness is and what it even means to be connected to our darkness. So individually, our darkness is represented by different parts of us, and these are often parts of us that we feel ashamed of or that we are afraid that other people won't love us for. So parts that we try to hide so that we can be more lovable or more likable, or so that people will think that we are good, right, and approve of us. So these parts might be represented in our shame, our sadness, our fear, our doubt. Our darkness might be represented in our anger or our rage, our grief. It might show up in addictive patterns or behaviors. It might show up in kind of egoic pursuits. And what I mean by that is things that we seek out of kind of an egoic need. So a need to, have others approve of us, a need to be seen in a certain way by other people. And so egoic pursuits are often kind of like ways that we will try to manipulate situations, or ways in which we will try to manipulate in how we are perceived so that people see us one way. So it might, and this isn't, this isn't done out of malice. It's often very unconscious that we are doing this out of our awareness, that we might, try to pretend to be more accomplished than we are so that other people think that we are very accomplished. Or going to family events, we might pretend things are going better at work so that, we don't get certain questions, or we might even make up a relationship so that we, people don't add certain pressures on us. And so it's not always from a place of trying to hurt or harm anybody that we might do those things, but it's from a place of not accepting ourselves fully, or fearing that other people won't accept us fully. And so we might engage in egoic pursuits in that way. It also comes in the form of the things that we hate, that we try to reject, and that we try to, distance ourselves from, or we resist because we don't like those things. These are all parts of our darkness. What might also surprise you is that there are many wonderful parts of our darkness as well. Like, this is where we experience our guilty pleasure. So, like, one of my clients has the guilty pleasure for watching The Bachelor and The Bachelorette shows. And it's something that she, kind of tries to hide from other people in her life because she worries that people won't think that she's, this intellectual person if she's watching, this thing that she kind of judges herself for as being like trashy TV, right? And so these are the ways in which like our guilty pleasures become something that is hidden from the world and we keep away from other people. It might also be, parts of us that are, are represented in our sensitive nature or our creativity. It will show up in our repressed urges or desires, like our healthy and normal sexual desires or spiritual desires and pursuits that sometimes get repressed because we are afraid of our darkness and we are afraid of these parts of ourselves. Some things that we might feel shame for, things that we might that might be really wonderful parts of ourselves, like maybe you have an interest in learning more about herbology and learning more about herbs in your life and the nature around you, but there's shame about that and thinking that that's not a worthwhile pursuit, or that people that you care about might not approve of that and think that that's worth your time. And so that might be something that becomes a part of your kind of darkness, even though that would be a wonderful addition to your life. And so the things that we keep in our, our darkness aren't always bad things, aren't always things that we need to have shame about at all. And so these are some of the ways in which our kind of darkness can show up individually, and there's others as well, like, you know, our rage and anger is a really big way that this can show up if we're not working with these parts and bringing them more into the light. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But first, I want to also talk about collective darkness and what that means a little bit more. Collective darkness is really seen in the shadow elements of our society, things like racism and sexism, ableism, things that we see that create division and divisiveness in our country, that create more separation, hatred towards certain groups of people, things like Native women going missing and being murdered at higher rates, things like Black women, mothers, having higher rates of death when they're giving birth and during postpartum periods. These show up in our collective shadows of things that we don't want to talk about, things that are rooted in racism, things that are rooted in oppression of people. And these are things that we really need to talk about and need to be aware of, because the more we hide our darkness, the more these things rule our life. And that is why it is so important to work with our darkness and to work towards honoring and loving our darkness, so that we don't let these things become the unconscious that rules our life, which is what is happening so much in the world right now. And we're starting to see the breakdown of that, the unconscious wounded behavior being brought to the surface, to the conscious mind and the conscious place, so that we can acknowledge it, so that we can acknowledge these horrors and shift them and heal them and work towards love and forgiveness and connection in communities, so that we can right these wrongs and protect women and children and make healthcare more accessible for all people, not just some people. So it's really important to understand that events like war and school shootings and mass violence, things like what's happening in Iran, things like, you know, the fentanyl drug crisis, these are all rooted in our collective darkness. And they are all rooted in the patriarchy, in this toxic masculine system. And this does not have to do with men. I'm not saying that men are toxic. This is a toxic system that impacts both women and men and all genders and non-binary people. In fact, this is a system that impacts people who are, quote unquote, kind of outside of that normalized society, that kind of in the box, cis society. It targets that even more, and it creates even more suffering for these groups of people, which is why, especially as white people doing our work to decolonize ourselves, especially as healers in the world, it is imperative to show up in integrity, to be aware of the collective darkness in our world. So many spiritual guides and spiritual teachers try to live outside of this reality and try to pretend that this reality does not exist. And I understand their reasonings for that, but it's also very important that we stay anchored in shifting this reality. Yes, being aware of the realities that we're moving towards and how to anchor in those consciousnesses, but also staying present in what is unfolding here and how can we witness it and acknowledge it from a place of love, from a place of compassion, from a place of wanting to understand, so that we can not make these same mistakes again, not continue to participate and engage in behavior that harms people at a mass and collective level. Excuse me, let me take a sip of water. So, what I've been talking about is kind of heavy, and so I just want to, kind of acknowledge that, and for you to be able to take a moment to just connect to your heart center, remembering that even when things seem dark, as that quote says, it's always darkest before the dawn, we are coming to a period of dawn. We are coming to a period of much more light. And when we are shining the light on this collective darkness that has been present for hundreds and hundreds of years, so that we can really shift out of this consciousness and into a much higher consciousness. So just taking a moment to really connect to your heart as we understand this collective harm that the patriarchy has caused and created in so many, and how those patterns show up in our own individual lives, how the patriarchy creates this oppression and suppression of our dark parts and keeps us living in a place of shame of these parts and disempowerment from these parts, cutting ourselves off, thinking that these parts make us unlovable, or thinking that these parts make us bad, or that we're going to go to hell if we express these parts, which is simply not true. Okay, and so breathing a sigh of relief, knowing that if you yell at somebody today, it is not going to mean that God does not love you. It is not going to mean that God punishes you or that the universe turns its back on you. You are still very much loved, even in those moments. Even when you are having a temper tantrum, even when you are feeling like you're going crazy, or you're losing your mind, or you just can't take any more, you are loved even then. And so remembering that and anchoring that in this moment. Remembering and understanding that if you struggle with these challenges, it is not a fault of your own. The patriarchy keeps people oppressed and suppressed and disconnected from their emotions, from their true experiences, from their personal power, from their sexuality, particularly women, right? We make women so wrong when they express their sexuality of they are the whore, right? And or if women are too much prudes, right, then they're like this Madonna, right? And so like on the spectrum, either way, women are seen as wrong, right? This creates a lot of darkness, dark parts for women where they repress and suppress these different beautiful parts of their sexual desire and expression. And so understanding that, again, our darkness is not always bad parts. It can be such beautiful, wonderful parts of us. And by honoring our inner world, by exploring this inner world and making peace with all parts of ourselves, we can also face our collective darkness with so much more compassion, so much more inner resilience, so much more understanding, and less blame, so that we can start to open doors instead of building walls. Recognizing that as we move towards understanding our collective darkness, that is how we also shift it. That is how we anchor in new ways of being, coming from a place of love, coming from a place of compassion and grace. So this is how we break collective cycles, by doing our own individual work, by becoming aware of our own internal patterns and cycles and how those patterns show up in our behaviors and our thoughts, show up in our relationships and how we communicate with others, how we relate to others and ourselves, and being able to free ourselves from these broken systems, both within, and then as a result of that internal work, being able to free ourselves from the external systems that we can often find ourselves trapped in. Understanding that all of us, every single person alive, has the work of deprogramming and deconditioning themselves from this kind of patriarchal matrix that we have all existed in. And it is time for us to now break free of that and be able to return to a much more matriarchal and imbalanced, and again, this isn't about gender, but much more the energies of both of those, to be in a much more balanced place with our feminine energy. And so it's not actually about being a matriarchal society, it's about moving more towards center and balance, which means for most people accessing more of their feminine, which they have kept in the darkness, in their shadow parts, for fear that it will make them weak, for fear that it doesn't make them strong. But it is those parts that are some of the most strong and powerful parts of us. It is not easy to be compassionate. It is not easy to be forgiving. Those are more feminine traits and energies. It is not easy to open our hearts up to people who have harmed us. It is much easier to close our hearts to people who have harmed us. And so being able to access our feminine allows us to actually gain more resilience and to actually be stronger. That women can actually, withstand more pain. We give childbirth. We are the portals of the divine in the world. And so we are really strong, and it's important for women to really start to step into their strength and the fullness of their power, to stop shrinking themselves, to stop hiding their parts, and to really allow those parts to be fully expressed. And that is how we free ourselves from these very harmful and toxic systems that continue to perpetuate violence, that continue to try to take away body autonomy, that continue to add to mental, emotional, physical, sexual, financial, spiritual suffering in the world. So the more empowered we become by loving and honoring all parts of ourselves, our light and our darkness, the more we are able to stand fully against these systems of oppression that have been so harmful for so long. So we honor our darkness when we make peace with it, when we give it a healthy expression, when we allow these parts of ourselves to be seen, to be witnessed, to be held with compassion, with love, with curiosity, not with judgment, withholding our judgment from these parts, withholding our shame from these parts, being able to allow ourselves to laugh, to cry, and to scream fully when we need to express those parts, to not shame these emotional responses, but to allow them to be expressed in healthy and supportive environments with people who are capable of holding all of these parts of ourselves and being able to discern who isn't, because not everybody is capable of holding all parts of ourselves. Not all relationships are capable of understanding us fully, and not from any fault of those relationships. It's just different people have different capacities. So being able to understand that and being able to discern who is capable of sharing these parts with you, who isn't going to go running away if you are having a little bit of a meltdown or losing your mind and needing to vent to somebody and needing to express, even if it is this great rage that might be showing up for you. But being able to instead move towards that rage with love, with an open heart, and give it a healthy expression. Giving it an appropriate space and environment to feel all that you feel without making any part of it wrong. And being able to reclaim these parts of you that other people may have deemed as wrong or bad or even toxic or poisonous. Being able to turn what others have made out to be your venom as your power. And so our anger, for example, is something that many women actually need to be able to express and to find safe spaces for. Women tend to hide their anger under sadness because sadness is a much more socially acceptable emotion for women to feel and express. We expect women to be tearful, but we don't expect women necessarily to be angry and rageful. And so when women feel this way, it can be very overwhelming for them, or it can be very shameful for them. And instead of recognizing that this is a normal and healthy human emotion that needs to be expressed. And so, part of that I kind of consider of being able to own our dragons, the dragons that live within us. And I've got this little dragon crystal that I bought recently from a new friend. Being able to work with our inner dragons and allow these fiery parts of ourselves to be expressed, that to understand that when we repress or suppress any parts of ourselves, we're also repressing and suppressing our power, because again, we cannot stand fully in our power if we are disconnected from ourselves, any part of ourselves. So the goal is to always be fully connected to ourselves, to be able to access all of ourselves at any given moment, understanding that different situations require different parts of us, right? Like yelling at your child might not be the best expression of your anger, especially when your anger really isn't about your child or what they're doing, versus like if, somebody is, aggressively approaching you in a grocery store parking lot or something, then to yell and to be loud and to express your anger and rage and to, stand up for yourself in that experience, like that might be very appropriate. And so if we try to cut off our anger and rage in all areas of our life, then when it's appropriate to come up, we're not going to allow ourselves to, or we're going to shame ourselves for and create more problems, instead of understanding that this is a normal and appropriate response to the situation that we're experiencing. And so not shaming these parts of yourself, but getting curious about them. And when you see these kind of inner dragons showing up, being able to work with those parts. I know for myself, I made my anger wrong for a long time, and I tried to really tame that anger and make it not there and make it, help myself respond differently. And now I understand that when I reach that level of anger, there's a reason for that. I'm not an angry person. I don't get like that on a normal basis. So when I have, something is wrong, something is off. And generally what that means is somebody has crossed a boundary with me. Maybe I didn't even know that boundary was there, and I'm learning that myself. Maybe something is getting triggered in the past and it now needs a boundary in the present. And so just being aware of that and not making that wrong, but being able to understand why this part might show up. Being able to turn our venom into power. Another example of this for me is that I'm a very sensitive person. And for my whole life, I was made to feel that my sensitivity was wrong and that it was bad and that I was too sensitive and I cared too much and I needed to stop all that and I needed to toughen up, right? Those were really harmful messages and created a lot of self-shame and self-sabotage in my own life. And it meant that I suffered a lot more than I needed to, because I cut off parts of myself that were wonderful and beautiful, and I denied different parts of myself, and I felt shame when those parts showed up and expressed themselves. And it really was only just a couple of years ago, maybe like 6 years ago now, that I really started loving my sensitivity, and I really started understanding like what a beautiful gift this sensitivity is, and that most people don't experience life this way. Most people don't experience the full depth of life that I get to experience, and how beautiful that is that I have that gift. And not seeing my sensitivity as a burden or a barrier that needed to be overcome, that needed to be fixed, that needed to be made better, but realizing that my sensitivity is what makes me better, is what makes me so loving, is what makes me so understanding to other people, is what makes me such a good space holder for other people's darkness and their big emotions and their traumas and their life experiences. And so understanding that my sensitivity is what gives me my empathy and helps me really relate to other people and connect deeply with other people. And so without that, I wouldn't be as good at my job as I am, and I wouldn't be as good, I wouldn't have like connecting with the people that I loved as I am, and in the work that I do in the world. And so to recognize that, these parts of ourselves that we deem as our dark parts can actually be some of our most wonderful, incredible, magical, magnificent parts that really are such medicine to the people in our lives. And that that these parts, these dark parts that we label as dark parts, are often the parts of us that need the most tenderness and need the most gentleness and need the most softness. They're the parts that need us to create the most safety for them to be present and to exist, to be expressed. And how we can find ways to safely express these different parts of ourselves. And not shame these different parts of ourselves. One of the ways that we can do this is by making time each week to connect to these different parts of ourselves, to connect to the sadness that might be showing up that week, the anger that might be showing up, the frustration that might be present in the week, to really be connecting to whatever darkness might be showing up for you in that present moment or in that present week. We always want to be working with what is showing up presently in our lives, because that's how we also heal whatever's in the past, because whatever's troubling us presently is generally connected to something in the past. And so we can work through both of those together by staying present. And then we're also setting ourselves up for a better future when we are, working towards or moving towards these different parts of ourselves with much more love and compassion. And so making time each week to connect to these parts, and that can be through like sitting and, meditation, just like kind of sitting quietly and listening to these different parts. I always recommend placing a hand on your heart so you can remember to stay connected to your love as you connect to these different parts of yourself that your brain might be used to judging, right? And so again, we want to remember to stay away from the judgments and move towards the love and the forgiveness and the compassion for these different parts of ourselves. And so giving these different darker parts of you a chance to be heard, a chance to sit and listen to these different parts of you and see what they might need to communicate to you or what messages they have for you. Being able to, write, and you could journal, journal from the perspective of these different parts. Like you can journal from your anger. My anger feels this. My anger wants this. My anger needs this. My anger wants to say this. And journal from that place and give these different parts of you a voice. You can also just speak this. Most of us have a voice memo app on our phone. So being able to speak out loud, I'm angry about this. I feel sad about this. I feel lost about this. I feel confused or grief about this. And being able to name those things. When we do that, we remove it from inside and from carrying it in our jaw, in our neck, in our shoulders, in our back, in our hands. We release it so that we are not carrying it in our body. We're not holding this heaviness, this density within us, but we are allowing it to be moved through us and expressed. Then we're not going to be carrying so much of that in the future. And so whether it's journaling or speaking or singing or writing or drawing, we can also draw our different dark parts and express them that way, painting them, however you like to express yourself, but finding healthy expressions for that. Even, ways of expressing anger that other people might not agree with. Like I love sometimes expressing anger in a kind of a violent way, if you will, that punching a pillow can be a great way to express anger, or throwing a tennis ball, or even breaking things. I've gone to Goodwill and bought used plates before and wrapped them in a towel and just took a hammer to them and smashed them as a way of allowing that anger to be expressed. And then in doing so in a way that doesn't create harm for anybody and doesn't hurt anybody else, doesn't impact anybody in a negative way. And this is how we can experience and express our dark parts without letting them overwhelm us, without letting us, take them out on other people that we care about, without letting them come out in moments that we don't want to because we have been trying to push them down and suppress and repress them for so long. But when we give these parts of us time each week to be expressed, then we are no longer holding ourselves hostage to any parts of ourselves. And we can move more towards inner trust, inner love, inner acceptance, and embodying the fullness of who we are fully. Something that has been incredibly helpful for me in working with my own shadow parts and my own darkness is to have a guide for this work, and to remember that you are always supported on your journey and your spiritual awakening. You have so many guides and ascended masters and ancestors available to be able to help you and work with you. One of my guides in the darkness is I love working with the symbol of the owl. Owls are known for their wisdom, and they are nocturnal creatures. They go hunting at night. And so they are very familiar with the darkness. They're very comfortable at night, and it's when they can actually kind of excel. And so I call on this as a spiritual ally, and I call on the owl as a spiritual ally to be able to guide me through times of darkness, to be able to work through challenges that are showing up in my life and help me find my way through. The owl is just one guide, but there are many that I work with at different points depending on what darkness might be showing up that needs to be worked through in my life. And so being aware of this in your own life and what guides or supports you might want to call on or need to call on as you are, on a journey of working more with your inner parts and understanding these different parts of you and making peace with these different parts of you, learning to love these different parts of you and recognize that they're not bad. There is no part of you that is bad. There is no part of you that is wrong. You do not have to be fixed and changed and forced to be some watered down version of you or some overly kind version of you. It's not kind to you to try to do that. So recognizing that the most loving and compassionate thing you can do is to fully embrace and be aware of all of you and understand how to work with these parts from a place of integrity, from a place of authenticity, from a place of wanting to be of service to a greater relationship with yourself, your loved ones, and the world around you. And when we operate from this place of, is this what's best for me, my loved ones, and the world around me, then we are always operating from a place of integrity and always operating from a place of love, Christ consciousness, right? And so this is being able to come into harmony with all parts of ourselves, understanding that no part of ourselves is wrong. Society has maybe made us feel that way, or certain people in our lives have made us feel that way, but we can reclaim those parts of ourselves and recognize just how lovable and just how wonderful those parts of us truly are, and how working with them can make us more powerful, can help us be more confident, can help us trust in ourselves even more to bring our dreams into reality and to go after the things that we want in life and that make life so wonderful and meaningful and fulfilling. So, on this night of winter, the day before winter solstice, allowing yourself over the next couple of days to connect to your own inner darkness and to do so from a place of love and compassion, knowing that the light is always there and always present and always holding and supporting you. Going into your darkness does not mean you will not return to the light. In fact, that's part of this journey, is like bringing these parts into the light and extending the love that we give to our light to our dark parts as well. And so taking this time of the winter solstice to be able to connect to the darkness, know that there's nothing to fear in the darkness, know that it is all beautiful, there's medicine and magic and wisdom to be gained in this period before the light starts to return to us, and really considering what in your own life is being reborn right now, or what within you is being reborn. Thinking about maybe dreams that you used to have when you were a child that have been returning to you, and things that you used to want to do when you were younger that you forgot about, and they're starting to come back to you now, and you're starting to remember when you had those dreams and you had those ideas and you thought you could live in that kind of way, and realizing that you can now, and being able to connect back to that. So if you have any questions at all about working with your darkness or working with your shadow parts, please send me a DM or leave a comment on this video when it's posted. And if you catch the replay, please leave me some love in the comments and let me know what you learned and what you'll take from this live. And Yeah, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful solstice. Actually, before we go, I'm gonna just burn a little bit of Dragon's Blood sage. Dragon's Blood sage is really, really good for being able to release any darkness, any density that does not serve us, any parts of us that were created by others that aren't actually who we are and don't actually fit into who we are. So I'm burning just a little bit of this Dragon's Blood to help set your winter solstice off on such a beautiful, nourishing foot, allowing you to really thrive this winter season, allowing yourself rest and to slow down, allowing yourself to really be present in all that is unfolding in life and really trying to see the beauty of all experiences, no matter how challenging they may be, no matter how scary or overwhelming they may be, but to see how there might be divine at play even in those dark moments, even in those moments of struggle or suffering or pain. But being able to see where there might still be beauty, where you can move towards tenderness to yourself and more love and compassion. So allowing yourself to take in and receive this wisdom, this medicine tonight. And I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful evening, and happy winter solstice to you, dear soul. Thank you so much for joining.